Hoy hoy, it's Nickerson here. Battled out this snow we got outside and came in to make a little flip video. So if you want to take out your notes on 9-3, we'll get started. So we first need to look at the steps. This method a lot of people prefer to use, but some of you may be guessing checkers, and we'll see that tomorrow though when we get to class. First thing, we want to identify our ABC. That's more of a prerequisite skill, and you can do it very quickly. So, you know, A is 5, B is 12, C is 7. Since we know that, now we're ready to go. First step, we're going to multiply our A by our C. Remember that A is only the coefficient, so we do 5 times 7, which we know equals 35. Now, we want to find the factors of that number, the A times C, whose sum is B. So we're looking right now for two numbers who add or multiply to 35, but add to 12. They add to the B value. Well, this time it's going to end up being that the numbers are 5 and 7 because they add up to equal 12. Next step, it says rewrite the polynomial using the factors to replace B. So what that's going to mean is you write the first term, 5x squared. You can write your last term, 7. But instead of having 12x in the middle, we're going to rewrite it as the two factors that we found that multiply to 35 and add to 12. So this time that would be 5x and 7x. Does it matter which one goes first? No, it does not. Now that we have that, very similar to what we did last week, we'll look to do factor by grouping. So we're going to group the first two, group the last two, and do the same procedure we did the other day. Pull the GCF out, 5x, x plus 1. Pull the GCF out, 7, x plus 1. We got the matching parenthesis, so we take what's in front, and we take x plus 1, and we have our answer that we think works. Take a second at the end, just check it with a FOIL, check it with a double distribution, whatever you're going to do, okay? If we FOIL it real quick, here's my answer. So I'm going to box that up, let's FOIL it. We FOIL 5x squared, 5x, 7x, 7, and then sure enough, when we combine those middle terms, it's 12x. We start this one off, our A, our B, our C. So we got A is 2, B 7, C 3. First step, multiply the A times the C, we get 6. We want to find two numbers that multiply to 6, but add to 7. Well, 3 and 2, those multiply to 6, but they add to 5. So it's got to be a different factor. So we got 6 and 1 as our two factors. Now that we have those, now we're ready to rewrite the middle term. First term stays the same. Last term stays the same. And then we rewrite the middle terms. So the middle term, instead of 7x, we're going to write it as 6x plus 1x. Could we write it as 1x plus 6x? Absolutely. Okay. Still get the same answer. So let's go ahead. 4 terms, factor by grouping. Take the GCF, 2x, x plus 3. 1x and 3. No GCF other than the number 1. Can't forget that when we seem like there's nothing, that if they have nothing in common in variables and the numbers, we always have a GCF of 1. Now that we have it, rewrite it, write the stuff that's in front, write the duplicate parenthesis. There's our answer. Box that puppy up, and then double check. Right, a little checky. Check, check. We got 2x squared, 6x, 1x, 3. Sure enough, we got, okay, same thing. A, B, C. A is 3, B is 5, C is 2. First steps, multiply the A times the C. A times C, 6. What numbers multiply to 6 but add to 5? Well, sure enough, those numbers would be 3 and 2. They add to 5, but they multiply to 6. We've got our factors, so we're going to rewrite the middle term. First term the same, last term the same. Doesn't matter which one we put first. And now from here, 4 terms, we're going to group, and only plot a y here. So we got 3y plus 2. Doesn't look like we can pull anything out here, so we know we can plot a 1. And then you're going to see that we end up with y plus 1, 3y plus 2. Box it up. And then just check it out on the side here. Let's check. We FOIL 3y squared, 2y, 3y, 2. And sure enough, when you combine your middle terms, it matches. Okay, let's look at the third example together. Same steps apply. So if we start this one off, A times C, 14. We want to find, though, two numbers that multiply to 14, but add to negative 15. So we know if it multiplies to a positive, but adds to a negative, both numbers have to be negative. So we got to think of our factors. Well, 7 and 2, so negative 7, negative 2, but those add to negative 9. That wouldn't work. But we got negative 14 and negative 1. The first term, rewrite the last term, and then we put in our rewritten middle term. We've got 4 terms. We're going to group it. Same thing, GCF, 7x, x minus 2. When we come here, mentioned it the other day when we did factor by grouping the first time, on these problems, a lot of times you're going to see that you get a negative in the third spot. If you have a negative in the third spot and you look and you say, well, this is positive negative and this is negative positive, when you take out your GCF, you take out the negative of it. So we go here and we say, well, the GCF's 1, but if I don't take out a negative 1, then my parenthesis won't match. If I just took out a 1, I'd have this, which isn't a match to this, and then I'd have to pull out the negative. So I like to call that the hot spot. Some people just like to argue with me. They call it the cold spot, the lukewarm spot. Whatever kind of spot you'd like to call it, is when you have that third term here, and if it's negative, you've got to know that you've got to pull out the GCF of a negative. Now that we have it, we got 7x minus 1, x minus 2. There's our answer. We'll check it. 7x, 7x squared, 7, negative 2, negative 14x, negative x, 2, and sure enough, when you combine your like terms, it matches. So first step, multiply your A times your C. You get negative 30, and we didn't see one like this yet, but I want you to try it out on your own. So negative 30. If you have negative 30, we know to multiply to a negative, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. And there's many factors of this. A lot of people, when they see 13 and 30, and they have to multiply to 30, they're thinking, oh, 3 and 10. Not the case this time because it was negative 30. Since it was negative 30, our two factors were 15 and negative 2. Doesn't matter which order you write them in. I wrote them, so I had to deal with a hot spot for me. But either way, once we write those in, group them, pull your GCFs out, and you can see here, there it is. The negative in that third term. We know that we need to pull out the negative GCF. We get our final answer here of 5x minus 2, x plus 3, and then finally do the FOIL, check it out. Negative A value. whenever you have a negative a value, it can make things more difficult sometimes. So I think the easiest way to take care of this is to get rid of the negative a, let's take a negative 1 out. And when you do so, you're left with a positive a. It will flip the signs of everything else. And now that we have that, factor this just like you would have on the first page, but when you write your final answer, just put negative 1 out front. So when we do this, a times c now, 9 times 2, 18. What numbers multiply to a positive 18, but add to a negative 9, negative 6, negative 3. So I'm going to rewrite my first term, break down the middle, and then rewrite the last. All at the same time. There's a negative 1 out front, and then from here we're going to group GCF, negative in the hot spot, get our answer, and once we have our answer, put that negative 1 back out front. Okay. One off, I pull the negative 1 out, and once you pull the negative 1 out, it makes everything positive in this one due to the signs that were inside. Then from there, a times c, I got 12. What two numbers multiply to 12 but add to 7? 3 and 4. Once you have that, we're rewriting our middle term, 3x, 4x, and then do factor by grouping. Group, GCFs come out. Once you have that, we see we got the matching parenthesis. Final answer, don't forget, we got the negative 1 that's still out front. When we have a ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 equation, well, we're going to make sure, just like any equation, when we factor in, we got to make sure it's equal to 0 first. This time, it's equal to 0. Good to start. Then we're going to factor the same steps we just learned up top. So we got a times c, negative 30. And we need to find two numbers, multiply to negative 30, but add to 7. So we think for a second, well, 30's got a lot of factors. So sometimes for some of you, you might want to write them out. You're like, okay, we've got 2 and 15, 3 and 10, we've got 6 and 5, or 5 and 6. Those are probably, got a couple more in there. We got 1 and 30 if we wanted, but we know we probably won't use that. Remember, it's negative 30. So if it's negative 30, one of those has to be positive, one of them has to be negative. If you want to think about it, you know that they have to be 7 apart. Well, for 7 apart, we're going to use our 3 and our 10. We just got to make sure we know which one's negative, which one's positive. So this time, we know it's 10 is going to be positive because the 7 is positive. If it was negative, 3 and negative 10, so we got 10 and negative 3. It multiplies to negative 30, adds to 7. We'll rewrite that middle term. Some people would rather rewrite it every time so they can, if they can avoid a hot spot, avoid it. Doesn't matter to me. I'll avoid it this time. I know earlier we took it head on. And now, when we do this factor by grouping, GCF x, 2x minus 3, GCF 5, 2x minus 3. Now from here, we get our answer, and it's equal to 0. But we got to remember now, what can we do when we've got the parentheses equal to 0? We can use the zero product property. And what that means, remember from the other day, take those parentheses and set them equal to 0 and solve. So we got x plus 5 equals 0, 2x minus 3 equals 0, and we're going to solve that out. X equals negative 5, x equals 3 over 2.